So this is how you do it. You choose a location, your raised bed, your orchard, your open field, any soil that needs help. You select your time of year, your purpose, and a corresponding cover crop. You can select a special crop or buy a mix. You can plant you planted it, you cut it, do not pull it out. Do not pull out the roots before it seeds. This is the general way cover crops are done. You leave the cut down material to rot or act as mulch, and then you plant whatever else you were going to plant, or you plant more cover crops, and over time your soil is going to improve. Okay, let's go through a few of the specific ones that I've used. This is oats. That's that field. Those are milky oats. They're beautiful. You can also make tea out of the tops. That yellowy part is the seeds. I am letting these reseed. So I should be clear. In my field, I'm letting things reseed because I'm just fascinated with how some years some of the cover crops come back really strong. Other years, others do. It's really interesting to watch. I'm just kind of watching this cycle there. But those are milky oats. Oats provide quick weed-suppressing biomass, and you can see the biomass. There's not a lot of weeds going on in there. Take up excess soil nutrients, and they can improve the productivity of legumes when they're planted with legumes. And they also they hold that soil in place during cool weather. So again, you don't have bare soil. My favorite is daikon, or any other large radish. They break up the soil, they improve water infiltration. So when you do get water in clay soil, sandy soil, that water just goes right down. But if you have any clay, if your daikons are there, so those are my daikons. They're crazy. They're big like that, and then I just break them off. I just go and snap them off when I'm done. When I feel like I don't want them to reseed or I want them to start rotting. I just snap them off, and they have huge taproot down in there. And then as I water and they're rotting, the water just kind of goes down along where they're rotting. You can also, I was growing these, and then a friend of mine, I think she saw a picture on Facebook of all my, she said, "Can I come over right away?" Their mom's Korean, and they make a soup with the tops. Took piles of tops, and I was happy to cut them off because I was going to let them rot. It brought me amazing soup, so there you go. That's how they look, going down into the ground. Horseradish, did you say? Yeah. They can get, I've had ones easy 3 feet. I mean, easy. Sometimes I can't even tell how deep they are because of clay soil. They break off. But in sandy soil, you can just pick them right out. These are great for sandy soil, letting them rot in your sandy soil.
I have a question, Ms. Bolonia.
Yeah.
So I planted like new grama and buffalo grass, and it came up, it did really well, but it comes up in little clumps and leaves space in between of the soil. And I do get other plants and I pull them out. So does that mean that soil is not covered? I mean,
is it really bare? Is it dirt looking, or?
Yeah, it's dirt.
I mean, I only have my own experience with blue grama and buffalo grass, but I'd say you can go get more of that seed, disturb the soil and plant it. It should be pretty dense. Does anybody else grow it as a grab? Yeah.
Yes, I know. I have, this is the 3rd year, it's kind of like a meadow, it's just.
Yeah, meadow.
And unfortunately, even though we made an attempt to get out the old Bermuda, it's creeping back in. And then areas where it doesn't seem to get as much water, that's where it's, there's a little bare dirt. So what I'm doing now is scratching that dirt and putting more wildflowers. It's got some wildflowers in it. So I'm putting wildflowers in it because I want it to be grass with flowers. I don't want it to be just grass.
If you want it just to be grass, put more of that grass seed.
Yeah.
I mean, those two grasses naturally have like a clumping way they grow. They can grow in clumps. You just want the clumps really close together.
Okay.
So I have lots of friends who have fields of it, and they've gotten it really dense and beautiful, but they just replant in the open spots.
Yeah.
Okay, daikon. This is me, the end of the season when it's about to freeze, and I picked a bunch for my friend, make soup. Samphon, this is a really beautiful, in the legume family, it fixes nitrogen, but the bees love it. You can get it at Plants of the Southwest. It gets these beautiful flowers. It does just stay there though. It doesn't, it's a perennial, it's there. And so if you get tired of it or you want to do something else in that area, you're gonna have to dig it out. It's also interesting that cows can eat it. Really good for erosion because it has, like, if you have a spot where you have a little hill and you want to grow it on a little hill, it would be really good for that. Really powerful root system. Hairy vetch, super common cover crop. So few legumes match hairy vetch for spring residue production and nitrogen contribution. Widely adapted and winter hardy. It's a great cover crop. I have also found though that it doesn't die in winter here. Just kind of, anybody else use it? It just doesn't die. They say it will. I mean, I kept reading on it, and if it dies, I'm like, oh, no, it doesn't. So again, this is one where if you put it in and you didn't want it to do that, you really need to weed whack it, cut it down, do whatever before it gets the seeds. But whatever time you had your soil in cover crops, whether it's 1 month or 2 months, you're improving your soil. So don't feel bad if you just want to do a small. So again, there's that winter wheat. That's like after I first put it in. You can see I had nothing in the yard back then. I just planted a plot of it right away. So this is in the winter, it's tall, it's green, it germinates, so I usually germinate it in the fall. And then it just goes slow all winter. There it is again, around the apple tree. That's a small plot, usually I have a huge plot. Okay, this is a courtyard that there used to be a room there. And so there's a big concrete slab. We didn't want that room, so we ripped it off the house, we took out the concrete slab, but the soil was terrible. It had no organic matter for 30 years or something, so I decided I really want to improve that, so we put in this courtyard. So I grew, that is winter wheat that I grew specifically to improve the soil. I did cut this one down before it got seeds, and I've never had a problem again. I did one planting of it, cut it down, let those roots rot in the soil. I let the tops just stay in the soil. I dug them in a little bit, and that was it. And one crop under. So this is what's happening with winter wheat under the soil. That's what it ends up looking like, the roots. Sunflowers. So again, the professor that I was mentioning earlier, he really liked using sunflowers. He was sadly working on a very big project in Ukraine to use sunflowers as a cover crop because they have a very extensive root system that when you cut them off will rot in there. But they're super good for the, how do people say that word? Mycorrhizal. I've been working it for years, but I'm terrible at saying it. But those are those beneficial fungi that now we know in agricultural science really benefit our soil, and the sunflowers grow them really well. I mean, that's what's growing underneath on the roots. It's growing this fungi. I think fungi over the years have gotten kind of like a bad rap, but they're super good, some of them, for your production of your plants. And so this is my field again. Oh, that went off. This is my field from a different direction, and then I planted sunflowers in it, and that's a mix of all kinds of cover crops. So that's oats, vetch, winter wheat, sunflowers, and then there's some trees in there. And people would ask, is it going to damage your baby trees? I found with my baby trees, it really protected them. I planted them in this really harsh, open environment. There was nothing there, and then I put these cover crops, and I really feel it helped my trees come along nicely. Barley is very interesting because it has a very long taproot, and it can go down and bring up nutrients into that taproot. And again, when it takes it in the taproot, and then when you cut it off, those nutrients stay in the soil. It's very good for going down and bringing things up. Okay. So a few thoughts that I've learned practically from doing this, and then the rest of this is just going to be a series of pictures, is that grasses for me are easier to control than legumes. I find the grasses get tall, you can clearly see when they're starting to get seeds, and you can just kind of do this clean cut. The hairy vetch is this lovely, beautiful, crazy, wild thing down on the ground, really low. Maybe it's just because I'm really tall. And I have a hard time just kind of observing when to cut it off. So I find the grass, so I do the legumes, but they're just down on the ground. You have to really get down there and see what's going on with them if you want to cut them off before they get seeds. Like I said, some cover crops are perennial, vetch, clover, saffloin, so it can become an issue if you don't want them there anymore. Daikon is much better planted. You'll read on the seed packet that you can plant it in fall or spring, but in spring it just goes to flower like that. And you do not get those big daikon roots. So if you want to get the big roots for improving your soil, do it in fall. They'll grow for months. Or you can even plant them in, late August or September. Get them going up, and they'll grow all through the fall. Let the cool weather grasses, like the winter wheat or the rye, and plant them in fall. Let them come up, go dormant, and then they take off in spring. Okay, this is my house when I bought it. I cried. I cried. I went out the back. I wanted a big piece of property. I wanted to live in the valley. I wanted a well. I wanted a well so bad, and I got a well. But I went out there, and there was nothing in the back half of this property. And in part, it was like great. I get to do what I want to do. But part of it was, oh no, it's dead, dry soil. And I was also just thinking of all the herbicides that probably been sprayed out there. So that was what I had to deal with. And my very first thought, well, I have two. I'm also a huge fan of soil sponges. Have you learned about those? Oh gosh, I can teach you about those. But basically, dig big holes and put a lot of organic material in it and let it rot. That's it. It's a soil sponge, but a way of improving the soil. But I thought of two things. I need to dig soil sponges in here. I need to get some organic matter in this soil, and I also needed to do cover crops. So that's what I did. This is some of my first. I bought the house in that summer of 2019, and that was the first. There's the fruit trees when they're still in their pots. I haven't even planted them yet, and that's some of the first cover crop I've put in. Here and here is all just a mix. It's the orchard mix from plants of the Southwest. Yeah.
So seeing where you started from and how dry it was and everything, how much watering does a cover crop take?
Not much.
That's what I was wondering.
Anybody who's growing them feel like they're hoggy with water? I don't.
I felt a little bit like it took more water than I expected.
Than you expected. And actually, I don't have a slide on this, but I'd like to tell you, I water with sprinkler early in the morning, really early in the morning when they're small, and then as soon as they get big, I just put the hose down at their base and let it kind of flood irrigate. And they grow so fast, I just found that water that stays down there, I won't have to water them once or twice a week once they're dense and the water is, they're dense, and I put the hose down to soak.
Did you improve the soil before?
Say again?
Did you improve the soil
No.
at all before
No.
you put the seed?
I don't buy fertilizer.
Nothing.
I don't do that.
I did
It's fine if you do that. I don't do it.
in my raised beds, and they're pretty big beds. And so in one, I had this beautiful cover crop, and I was going to then do some fall planting of some lettuce and things like that. So I cut it all down, and I didn't get around to the planting right away. It just kept growing.
Oh, it does do that. Thank you for saying that. You can cut it down, and it comes back to life. It just regenerates, right? Because the roots are there. Again, back to the cardboard. If you really want to just say, you're not going to grow anymore, you might have to put something on top of it for a while. Can't do that. So again, it's a little bit of a management thing, cover crops. Okay, so what was that? That was September. This was later in that fall. I wish I knew exactly what date, but that's what happens in a few months. The next spring, I started again. Oh, look at that winter wheat. Isn't that beautiful? Ooh. Oh, I grew it here too. I forgot about that. I grew it here and then cut it down. It never came back there, but this is the plot I grow over and over and over. And there's the field with the trees actually planted.
So it's not a perennial. If you cut the winter wheat, it dies. You would have to replant it.
Winter wheat's an annual. You always have to replant it. I just let it reseed itself.
Oh,
In that one plot, I let it just go year after year. I like it. My other goal in life is to cover my walls. Goji berries. Goji berries make the most amazing hedge. I don't think I have a picture of it. So that was, what date was that? That was April 9th. This is by May 19th. And see, for me, by the time they're that big, that's like 6 weeks later, I'm not watering as much because I'm just not getting much evaporation at that point. They're so dense. I find I don't have to water as much as I thought I would, and see the winter wheat? What's happened to the winter wheat there? There's the winter wheat right here. The next picture, I'm sorry I have to walk around so much. The next picture, it's here. It's grown a lot and it's gotten seeds. And by August of that same year, so that was May, by August, it's crazy back there. I don't mind that. I'm working towards a tidier, I'm actually a pretty tidy gardener, but because right now I'm working on soil improvement, it's gonna be wild for a couple of years. But I'll get it contained. So August, October. Meanwhile, we put in, I don't know if you remember that, absolutely bare yard. Vineyard, yes. Just made our first wine. 40 bottles. 40 bottles year one. Totally blew my mind. We were expecting to not have wine for a couple of years. So then this is starting again in May. Things are getting tidier. I've planted blue flax. Now I have just like a line of blue flax I keep there. My grapes over there. My cover crop here. I used to have cover crop here. I don't have it anymore. Kind of limiting my cover crops in certain areas. That's later that year. The vineyard gone crazy, and those are all cover crops there. So that was June. This is July. I will say sunflowers. I have by now I have a sunflower problem, and I told my husband this year I have to weed sunflowers. They're everywhere. I'm a little mixed about that. They're very beautiful, but they're coming up everywhere. So this is xeric plants. I don't want sunflowers in there, but they'll be coming up this year. But I actually started to pull my mulch aside, put cardboard down where I don't want them to come up, put the mulch over it. My cardboard's really handy for suppression. Okay, so that is the end of my talk, except for we can talk about your questions. There's some of the resources. There's literally an overwhelming amount of information out there on cover crops. But for example, if you go to Plants of the Southwest website, these are drop-down menus, so it says cover crops by zone, by sun need, by water need, by fragrance, and you can kind of select. Lots of seed companies have this too, where you can put in what you need, fill out their little boxes, and they will pop up what cover crops they suggest for you.